Hello, guys. Welcome back to R6 Esports Insider. Today, we're going to go into the Manchester Major predictions and who I think will win the Manchester Major. This is going to be a very interesting major. We got a lot of new teams like ITB, E1, Secret, Beast Coast, teams that never really made the major before. And even teams like Paris, PSG Talon, Scars, Bliss, Cruelty. I mean, we got so many new teams in this major that could easily maybe make a run. But all right, let's get into the video. Now, on to phase one of the major. Those teams consist of SSG, G2, Liquid, Bleed, Cyclops, GK, Cruelty, and Fear X. I think a lot of these teams are very good. Um, I think the weaklings are kind of Cyclops and Fear X. I feel like those teams are not that great, but never know. But my predictions for the teams that get knocked out have got to be Fear X, Cyclops, Cruelty, and GK. Now, I think GK and Cruelty are definitely teams that can maybe make it to phase two, but they need some. They just need to land their shots. They need to have really good games to be able to make it out against teams like SSG, G2, Liquid, and Bleed, who have had very good international success. Now on to phase two. Phase two is the Swiss stage. So every single team is going to have a chance. Every single team has a chance to play anybody. I mean, you can play anybody. But I think that 15, 16 teams, which is those are the first two teams where they don't win a single game. They're first two teams out of the major. I think it's got to be Scars. I think Scars just struggled way too much in the last year or so. They had a very good Copenhagen major last year, but I just don't see it happening for them. Now the other team is, I know this is kind of like typical prediction. I'll get all the Korean and Japan teams, but I think those two regions are definitely the two weakest. And I think PSG Talent gets knocked out, but I think PSG Talent does show signs of life, and they do show that they can compete with some really good teams. But I just don't see them maybe winning a game against an international opponent this major. But I think if they have another shot the next major in Montreal, I think they can maybe go deeper in the tournament. Now the 12th and 14th seeds, which are the next teams, where they win one game but they still lose three games. I think those teams are going to consist of E1, who had a great Brazilian league. They had some up and downs in group stage, but had a very good playoffs and got second place in Brazil League, which is arguably the best region in the world right now. But I just don't see them going far. I think they're a very young team, and they just don't have a lot of land experience right now. And it's just hard for me to put them higher into that maybe main stage or on the verge to main stage. I just don't see it happening for them. Now the next team is ITB. They had a great European stage. They got second place, got a map on BDS in the grand final, but I just like, again, just same thing with E1. I think they're a very young team. They don't have a lot of land experience, so it's hard to put them ahead of some other teams that do have land experience and are very good teams. Now the next team out of that 12 and 14, where they only won one game, is a very hard one for me to predict, but I think it's going to be Beast Coast. Now, Beast Coast is the same thing along E1, ITB, and Beast Coast. They've had kind of like similar seasons, except Beast Coast actually won NA. But I think they lack that international experience. And also, here another thing to keep in mind is that Gavini he's barely, I think he just got in. Like, his team has been there for a couple of days and he hasn't even been there. So they're out without a fifth for scrimming and stuff without him, or he's online. So that change, that's a very difficult aspect to deal with teams on land. So that's the thing to keep in mind with Beast Coast. Now, I think they're a very good team. They got a very good roster, very promising. But I think this land is just a stepping stone to maybe the next major or SI into a great run. 9th through 11th place are going to be the teams that barely missed out on main stage. So these are the teams that won two games and they just lost their last game to barely miss the main stage. I think through this, it's got to be Bliss. I think Bliss is very good, and they've taken steps towards going the main stage. But I think just this time, I think they just barely miss out. I think they got great chemistry. They're a very good team, and I'm very excited for their future. But I just think this time they just miss out. Now, for the next team, I think it's got to be Liquid. Liquid, they struggled. They struggled in group stage in Brazil League, but they bounced back towards the end of group stage, and in the LCQ, they made a big run. They beat teams like W7M, MIBR, and Fluxo. Even though Fluxo didn't win a game inside group stage, they went on a crazy run in the LCQ. So I think Liquid they're gonna show signs of life here, but I think they just barely miss out on top 8. Now the next team might surprise some people, but I think it's SSG. I think SSG they had a great LCQ, and I think they're just a really good team. But I just don't see them going very far in this tournament. I think they have issues that I don't know if they've solved yet. I mean, they might be able to solve them in their boot camp ahead of this major and during phase 1 and during Swiss stage. I think they might be able to fix those issues, but for right now, I can't put them in main stage yet. Now, on to main stage. Now, the main stage predictions. Now, this is going to surprise some people. I mean, right now we got BDS, G2, M80, Bleed, Dark Zero, FaZe, Furia, and Secret. Yeah, you can't really see it, but it's Secret. I think all these teams are great, and they all had great regional play and everything. So I think these teams are going to translate that great regional play to LAN. Now, the teams to get knocked out first in main stage, I think, are going to be Secret. Secret's a great team. They're very smart, but they're very young. But I think they're going to sneak into that main stage. Now, I think Bleed is that next team. Bleed's a great team, and I think they've taken steps each stage. First stage last year together as a team, they barely missed out on the major. Second stage, they went to Atlanta major, almost made it. They should have made it. They barely lost to SSG. Then in SI, they had probably the hardest schedule out of really any team. I mean, they played teams like W7M, Virtus Pro, SSG, Los. I mean, they played so many great teams. But I think they take that next step and they make it to main stage at the Manchester Major. Now, the next team I think is M80. M80 is really, they're an NA team technically, but really I view them as a European team because they got majority of European players, but they're a great team. And I think a lot of people are kind of underrating them. I had my doubts before the season, but they're great. And I think they make it to main stage. Now the next team is G2. Now G2, they've ever since winning SI, they haven't had that same spark or that same fire in them that I saw at Montreal last year. Now, I don't think they regain it. I think they do good enough to make it to main stage, but I think they just don't get past these 4 teams right here. I just don't see them beating these 4 teams, and I just don't. It's hard for me to picture it. I think Dark Zero's gotten better. I think BDS, they're a way better team. FaZe and Fury are the best 2 teams in the world. So I think that it's just going to be hard for those 2 teams, those 4 teams, for them to beat those 4 teams. Now onto the top 4, the semifinals. Now this would really just kind of depend on like matchups at this point, but it's kind of hard to do it without knowing. But I think it's first team Dark Zero. I don't see them making it to grand final, but I do see them going far here in Manchester. I think they had some struggles during regional play, but I think they figure it out for LAN. And I think this team is growing, and I just see them taking another step and making it to top 4. Now, the next team is going to surprise a lot of people here. I think it's going to be FaZe. Yeah, FaZe, they were undefeated in Brazil League, which is the hardest region in the world, and they've looked great probably over the past couple of years. But I just don't see them going deep. Like, I don't see them making it to the grand final, and here's why. Every single time at majors or SIs, they always seem like a favorite. They always seem like one of the top teams, maybe even the favorite to win it all. But they just never get it done. The only time they ever got it done was in Sweden. And I just don't see them getting it done here. I think that Furia and BDS are are just better. Yeah, FaZe beat Furia in regional play, but Furia last year didn't win Brazil League not once, and they won every single LAN event except Gamers 8. So I think that FaZe just barely misses out on that. Now onto the grand final. I think this would be a very interesting grand final if this ever happened. I mean, these are two great teams. One's kind of newer, but Furia won the last three events. But I think I gotta put BDS Furia. I think Furia wins it again. I BDS is a great team, but I just don't think that they are the team that can beat Furia yet. I can't pick against Furia until until someone proves me wrong. Until it's like FaZe, BDS, maybe even like G2 or any other team, I just don't see anyone beating Furia until they prove me wrong. Because Furia has won the last three events as W7M. They've won everything. Right now, they are the best team in the world. And I think it's going to stay that way, at least for now, until Manchester, until we actually see the major. But yeah, that's my predictions. I hope you liked it. It might have been a little boring, but hopefully, I hope y'all enjoyed it. And if you want more R6 Esports content, subscribe to the channel and follow my Twitter. And God bless.